Hi everyone, I'm Jace.
And I'm Yin-Ling.
Welcome to Freelance Creative Exchange, where every episode we talk about freelancing and the gig economy.
So today we're here with Siok Siok. And Siok Siok, I see you have a very colorful journey in your career, right? I see that you started out in media, you rised up in networks all the way up to EP, executive producer. You've made your own documentary. You've written a book or two. And you have even created a video platform in China. You have also become a mentor to entrepreneurs as well. So, can you share in your own words what is your whole story?
I think to understand that you need to understand my background. I have a background where I grew up very interested in the Chinese culture and language. I think I went to, I don't know what you still call it. I took Chinese as a first language. I went to Dunman High. But for me, Chinese was not a torture. I had a lot of friends where Chinese was a torture. Chinese lessons were a torture.
A bit
So
like me.
I had a stronger foundation than most Singaporeans. And then, but what was interesting was that I maintained it. So when I went to school in the US, I actually took comparative literature, which is the study of literature across languages and cultures. So, and I think a very fateful decision I made when I came back was I was a scholar with MediaCorp. So I had to come back. So when I came back to serve my bond, I made a very unusual request because they asked you, where do you want to be assigned to or posted? And I said I want to be in Chinese current affairs.
Oh, okay.
I prefer to be in Chinese programming, which I think surprised a lot of people because I graduated from the US. I could easily do English programming, but I somehow instinctively I thought that that the Chinese programming connected more with the audience or has a broader audience. They had very good visual storytelling. So because I came back, if I had come back and done English programming, I would probably have lost my Chinese, because I've already been abroad for so long.
Yeah.
But I decided to come back and do Chinese, and then so in the end I ended up being on this kind of cross-cultural track. So in my career I've always switched, do Chinese programs, then I did English news, then I did regional focus on China. So I think one of the things I find is, if you ask me why I went to China, one of the things I find in something in my character, enjoy suffering. No, it's, I find that at every crossroad, I've always made the more interesting choice.
Right.
So like when I was
see.
coming back from the US, I decided to choose Chinese programs because I thought it was more interesting at that point and more of a challenge for me. So I think going to China is the same thing. I thought that it was a more interesting choice because there's nothing like being there completely, because China is a very immersive environment. It has its own sets of rules. It's not a market where you can do remote control and say,
That's right.
And whenever people say that I split my time between this place and that place, in China it doesn't work very well because it has its own logic. It has its own mindset and mentality and rules and boundaries. But one of the things I learned, which I think is very, for me, inspiring anyway, is the mindset shift. Because of the size of the market, I find that even everyone that I've encountered in China has a certain boldness of vision. So like I published a book, photo book called 人在北京. It's a Beijing photo book.
We have it
Like
here.
in China, right? In China, if in Singapore, if I published a book, people would say, very artsy, nice book. And then won't make any money. But in China, I really had a whole range of people telling me, you can do this in 100 cities. You can start at 人在北京, then you'll be 人在深圳, and then you'll be 人在杭州. I think the size of the market help people see that anything can become a huge business or a huge endeavor.
Right.
And there's downside to it because it means that it's also a lot of hot air, like because not everything works out so well. But the upside is that it's this imagination. It's that nothing is trivial, nothing is small. And I think many creatives in Singapore, I think the challenge is how to have a dream that embraces the world. Because I think we tend to have, if you're in education, you think about the 400 schools. Worst comes to worst, now the school enrollment is down, so eventually we have 250. So I think it's really how do you, no matter where you're based, whether it's Singapore or elsewhere, that you have a vision that embraces the world and you have a story to tell that resonates with the world. I think that's the challenge.
Yeah.
So how do you seek out even the first opportunity to be in China? I mean, once you identify your goal, then the next, I think a lot of our freelancers, probably want to know if they decided to break out of the comfort zone, they want to seek out opportunity in whether it's in China or the regional country. But the question is always, then how? What do I need to do, right? So how do you get the opportunity?
My adventure was very interesting. I'm a very instinctive person, so I gravitate towards certain things or I feel like, okay, this is the time to do this. And I think if I'm someone, it's what your moms tell you not to do. Like if a stranger offers me something, your mom say, don't listen to the stranger.
Don't receive from strangers.
Especially on the internet. If they ping you on Twitter, no. But I tend to say, oh, really? Tell me more about it. And then that's the beginning of the end. I'll be drawn into something. But I think in terms of opportunities, and it's the same as not just for China, but any market, it's really about finding the first opportunity. And it doesn't have to be a perfect opportunity. Let me give this example. When I first decided that I want to maybe spend a year or two exploring China, I only know about a dozen people in China, because at that time I had just finished a stint at Discovery Channel where I was the executive producer and I managed a project called First Time Filmmakers. So the only people I was close to in Beijing, in China, were a bunch of young filmmakers who graduated from the Beijing Film Academy. It was the only thing I had. I had no other connections. I don't know any tycoon or important official. But what I decided to do was, okay, this is all I have. The 12 people in Beijing, and they're all broke and they're young filmmakers. So what I did was I thought, since I know some people at the Film Academy, maybe I can teach them.
Right.
So I found of the group of young people, I found the one that I thought was the best producer, as in very resourceful, know how to open doors. Right. And she was only about 22. She has just graduated from Film Academy. And I asked her, I said, look, I'm looking to take a sabbatical. I want to go to China. I think that based on my CV, I can lecture at the Film Academy. And she set up for me.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
This 22-year-old young woman went to ask her 主任, her faculty director, and said, and I got in. I got a stint to lecture at Film. Right. So that was the start. So when I first went there, so I think one of the pieces of advice I feel for people entering a new market is don't look for the perfect opportunity, but the opportunity that you can have. Because I think usually the first step is the hardest. Once you get in, it will grow, you see.
Yeah,
like you can go from knowing 12 people to 120 people to 1,200 people. Your network can grow. But I think most people want it all planned out. I think especially for Singaporeans, we're so practical. Like to do something like this where it seems to last a semester or year seems like very ill-advised. But in terms of finding a path as a creative, you'll find, that's why I make the analogy that we're all like actors or musicians or filmmakers now, is because as a creative, that's how you do it. You find, you're crossing a river. You just find the first big rock
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
站稳了. You
Yeah.
find the first big rock. You
Yes.
have something to stand on. And from there, you see the vista of opportunities. And then you say, okay, that's the next step.
Yeah.
It very seldom happens that you have it all
Yeah.
planned
Plan out.
Yeah. So if you look at
Yeah.
like the analogy of a struggling actor, like if you look at the big stars now, many of them were obscure until they have that one
First
movie.
break.
First
Yeah,
break.
that's
The first
right.
And they have no idea
When
what,
is it?
when
What
it is until
Yeah.
it has happened. So
Yeah.
so I think my advice in terms of going to China or any other market is create your first opportunity based on what you have, but not what you don't have.
Yeah, I think a lot of people as well, I think just generally in life has that misconception as well, where it's like even choosing what I'm
Right.
going to study.
Yeah.
You know, when I was choosing to go into the creative field, it was like, so where are you going to get a job? You know, it has to be all planned out in front of you.
But do you think that's a Singaporean thing? Right? Because we tend to plan well in advance, right? Like
Yeah.
our government plan until 2030, 2050. So, you know, like it's in us to say, okay, I must plan it out. Because if I don't have a plan, then I'm just, you know, putting myself in a very uncomfortable position.
But how do you
Yeah.
plan? Do you plan?
Yeah.
What do you mean by planning it out?
Right. I'm not sure. It's just,
Like
you
a
know, so
5-year plan.
yeah, correct.
Yeah, like
Well,
people
no,
always
well-
ask for your 5-year plan or your 10-year plan, and you're
Which
like,
we are
I'm
going
only
to ask you
20.
later as well, but
I think especially for people with creative career, I think traditional career planning is a myth. You know, this whole thing about a static plan that's like
Yeah.
3 or 5 or 10 years, you know, it's a myth because it's like, okay, let's say I major in something because the forecast is that this field will have a lot of job opportunities.
Yeah.
But often, if you have a long career, you know, if you have like a 10-year, going to work for 10 years, probably good enough. But if you have a long career, and it's going to be 20, 30, 40, 50-year career,
Yeah.
you'll find that by the time you get to that point, the target has shifted.
Yeah.
So I think one very good example is like in China, they always invent majors based on major events. So when they will have like a lot of majors about the Olympic Games leading up to 2008. So you have all these like majors that have 奥运管理, you know, like management of Olympics, whatever. But the problem is the Olympic Games will be over in 2008. So what do you do with the rest of your career?
Yeah.
So I think that it's not to say that you don't need to plan. I think the whole idea of a static plan, I think it's not very useful. You know, I think it's actually more about how do you say? It's really more about being ready for opportunities. You know, it's really about I think it's a mix of planning and being open. You know, which I think we're not very Singaporeans are not very good with ambiguity.
yeah.
You know, it's like
we're very sure about it before we do it.
yeah, but the problem is there's very little certainty. I mean, even people who was in academia and because of various reasons, he found himself out of a stable job a couple of years ago. And I was very poignant because he told me, you know, when this happened to me, I was 51. So 51 was very old back in the old days. You know, it's like you're near retirement. But 51 is very young.
Yeah, correct.
Now it's like, you know, you could be working for another 20 years or more.
correct,
Like I say, so I think my advice on career planning is really, it's better to have career invention. You know, it's almost like you know your core, but you reinvent that plan on a 3 or 5 year basis. So I think to explain, for example, people look at my career and say, oh my God, she was a TV producer. Then and then she went to China and she did digital video and social media and published books. It seems like there were a lot of changes. But for me, on the inside, I know I have not, the through line has not changed. So I think the main thing is to find your through line. My through line, the narrative of my life or the story of my career is really that I'm a visual storyteller. I tell story with pictures, but it's always combined with the interest in innovation. So I can go from TV, but if the next wave of innovation is in social media and short form video, then the visual storytelling, shifts to that new space. It's a layering of another level of skills.
Right.
But my visual storytelling skills have not changed.
Yeah.
So it's really about telling stories in real time, using the latest technology tools. So I think because I have that very clearly defined mission, right?
Yes.
I don't have to be rigid about my plans.
Yes.
Right.
So it's like as opportunities emerge, like I won't go off and do something that will abandon my skills.
Yes.
I will not be like become something very. I won't be like trading commodities or something like that. I know that this is what I'm good at, but I also know that it's the way I'm expressing my skills or my gifts would change over time.
Yeah.
And I think for most people, they don't have that 3-line. They don't have that
They haven't
3-sentence
found-
core
Yes.
mission.
Yeah, they haven't found
Exactly.
it, right? Yeah.
So then they plan, but what's the point of planning?
Yeah.
What's the point of planning if you... So I think what I find for a dynamic career is that you find that core, your Venn diagram, so to speak, is word, pictures, technology. And then you find the best fit in terms of opportunities to...
Yeah.
And you want to be slightly ahead of the curve,
Yeah.
but not too much ahead of the curve. So I think more... I always feel in terms of career planning that what is more useful instead of just the traditional tools of planning is actually decision-making skills.
Yes.
I find that I always marvel that people don't have tools to deal with risks and to make decisions. Because the thing that's difficult about planning is to deal with uncertainty. And the thing to deal with uncertainty is to know how to manage risks.
Yeah.
And I think really career planning really has to go alongside with very sound decision making and the ability to manage risks and understand your own risk tolerance. I think that's the thing.
Yeah, I think this is also important for freelancers, especially important for freelancers.
Yes, because I love that you brought it up, because I think we have seen, the nature of what creatives at work does, right? We have seen our fair share of people also going through a lot of career changes, or, they're transitioning basically. And it's sometimes you can see the potential that they have with the skills that they have built. But for they themselves, because they cannot see it, they cannot see what we have been talking about, which is a certainty that, they're going to be stable. And they go back to what they have known before, or they really don't know what to do when an opportunity is sitting right in front of them, because we connect them with opportunities, right? Say, you can do this, you have all the skill sets available.
I think that there are a few things. I think for this whole thing we're talking about in terms of planning, risk management, decision making, really interests me because I think if I look back at my career, I tell you this funny story, because I was very square when I was growing up. I was very academic. I was very bookish. I was very good in school. So when I was graduating from high school, most people will, if they place a bet, will think that I'll be a civil servant or a school teacher.
You're right.
Oh, that's
So-
very different.
Some years back, when we had a high school reunion, we had a table of 10 people who were the scholars from that year. So we were
Right.
all people who did very well at A-levels and went abroad.
Yeah.
And literally, out of 10 people, half were lawyers, the other half were in academia.
Wow.
And then there was me. I was an creative entrepreneur in Beijing. I could see them, all the other people coming up to me so close, saying, Siok, how do you become so cool? And actually, there's an essay I always recommend that everyone reads. It's an essay by the management guru called Peter Drucker. And he wrote many, many books. He's credited for being the father of business management. But he has a short essay called On Managing Oneself. And it's something that I'll recommend every freelancer, every creative to read. The key is not to plan, to control what's outside. The key is to manage yourself,
Yeah.
to have that awareness, to understand how you learn, to understand what you're good at, to understand, and I think one thing that I've done for many, many years, let me see how many years, almost 20, and I'm only 21, so since I was one.
Wow, you're born with it.
Was and it's recommended by in this essay. It recommends that every time you make a major decision, write it down. Write down a decision, why you made it, your expected outcome, and then after a certain period of time, review it. So for 20 years, I've done that. So when I first decided to go to China, when I started a company in China, I was offered an opportunity. When I take up something, I'll write it down, and I will create a point of review. So, and why is it important? It's because it clarifies your own thinking about yourself. Right? Only when you know who you are can you actually respond to the opportunities. And planning is really, the point of planning is to make sure you're ready for the opportunities that unfold for you. The point of planning is not to protect you from surprises. It's like, oh, this is a really good opportunity, but it was not in my plan. It's not in my plan, so no. So I have to stick to my plan.
That's a great point of view, actually. Yeah.
When I first went to China, the first year, 18 months, I was just exploring. I taught, I made a documentary for my students. I promoted the documentary. But the important point was I found my community. Because on social media, I connected with a lot of people who were entrepreneurs, investors, bloggers. So it was a different community than in Singapore, where everyone I know was in television. Actually, I was offered an opportunity because an investor was looking to start a video platform. And he asked around and say, is there someone who can work with young people and make videos very cheaply? The emphasis on being very cheaply. And my name came up because I was known in that circle as the filmmaker. So what happened was I met this investor and he said he wanted to do this. He asked me if I would do it with him. And I think that's the one thing that is very different about me is I tend to say yes. I
Not
say,
even, given the fact that you don't even know the investor. Is he someone you know for
I know
a
we
few
have
months?
common friends, but here's how I go back to decision making and planning. Here's how I take risks and make decisions. I said yes because I felt that I've not done anything for the internet. I was curious about it. So I wanted to try. I wanted my opportunities to open up rather than to go back, as you said, to do more TV. Although I could do TV forever, but so I thought, okay, this is worth trying. I don't know what it's like, whether I like it, and then the other very important thing is I usually will write it down and I will manage my risks. So I write down what are my biggest risks. And then what I did was I gave myself 1 year. I said, okay, this is probably going to fail. I don't really know this guy. He's a stranger from the internet.
But it's okay, he's giving you money.
My mom warned me about, So, but I thought through the risks and I thought, okay, I can take the risk for 1 year. And if it doesn't work out, I go back to what I was doing before. If it works out, it will open up a whole new career, new. So I think that's what I recommend for freelancers as well, is take risks, but manage your risks and be very methodical about it and know when you can turn something off. And make sure that when you turn something off, it's not too detrimental. You can that you can afford it. Because I give a lot of talks about career management, especially to young women. People have this thing about how, they are so ponderous. They say, I want to make a change and make a career transition, but I'm afraid I'll make the wrong decision and my life will be ruined. And the problem is this, and it's very simple. The only way to become good at making decisions is to make a lot of decisions and make a lot of mistakes. You have to do it. It's almost like if you are learning archery, you have to practice before you're on target. But the thing is, you have to make sure that every mistake you make is not too costly. So it's actually a very process of very deliberate management. So you know that and very disciplined. Like no matter how much you like the stranger from the internet that's offering you the world, know that you don't know the person. You know that people are complex, and when you come together as partners for a project, things may not work out, for all the good intentions in the world. So my encouragement for people who, creatives or freelancers who want to take a chance at a new project, a new vertical, whatever, is trust your instincts, but manage your risks. Tell yourself, and that's why I always say to people always look at my career and say, oh, you've been so brave, foolhardy. But the thing is, I always tell people that it looks like I've been brave my entire career, but actually I've only been brave for 1 year at a time. So what the biggest risk I take, I only take it 1 year at a time. And I know how to exit at the end of 1 year. And I think if people can chunk their risks, break it into smaller pieces, they can make better decisions and become much more successful in terms of having a longevity, having a career that's evolving, and I think that's what I recommend in terms of decision making. So one of the things that's interesting about China is that people in Singapore especially always think, oh my god, you went to China, some of my friends say 跟中国人抢饭吃, such a competitive market. But I always find that when I was coming back to Singapore, I always thought I'll take a walk along the river because my house is along the river, and I always think my worst case scenario is I come back to Singapore. So if that's the worst case scenario, I can be very brave, right? Because no matter what the downside is, I just come back to a more stable place, more where it's home, and I know it's easier to find navigate and things like that. So I think my recommendation really is become very good decision makers. I think it's really not all for nothing. You can break things down so that you can take what seem like very big risks, but as you're experiencing it, it's actually in a very managed and deliberate process.
That's right.
So I think that's
What was the most impactful wrong decision that you have ever made?
Oh, many. I keep making wrong decisions. I think one of the things about what you call career planning, decision making, is really that, and I have a lot of young people saying to me, I want to make a change, I want to invent my career, I want to make a switch, but I'm afraid I make the wrong choice. But the thing is, I find is that the universe covers your mistakes. I think you need to understand, what I mean by that is that sometimes a big mistake or unintended mistake opens a different door. And it's not what you would have planned, but then it is something that is creative. It's something that, I think the thing is, you can make something of it. I think that's the whole thing. I think one of the things I always talk about, and it may resonate with some people, is also that talking about mistakes and all that. I think for many years, in the first part of my career, I struggled with the fact that I wanted to work for a big company. And not because I consciously wanted to, but because I've been programmed to. Because first of all, I was a scholar. So the path should be work for a big company or civil service, climb the ladder.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that it took a very long time for me to accept that I was not happy working in a big corporation.
Yeah.
Because it's hard because people kept offering things to me. Because I seem so nice, soft-spoken, bilingual some more. So I think people from corporations keep offering things to me, like, oh, this job, this opportunity. But over time, with a series of events or setbacks, I realized that I'm not happy working in this like a big corporation, and I can do it, and I probably most people would have done it because it's a good life, it's stable. But it took me a long time to accept that I wasn't happy, and when I forced myself into it, it doesn't last. They'll either fall out with the boss or something, even though I'm very, very mild by all standards.
And when you unleash.
Yeah. But so I think if that was one mistake, was I spent so much time trying to fit into a corporate mold because people keep offering me things, and it seems like my friend used to joke that people think of me as a good trophy wife because looks like if someone can hire me, I'm very capable, I'm not threatening, I'm very nice and all that. But the thing is, so I think my creative career only really started, if you look at my career, only started when I stopped working for big companies. All the films, all the books publishing, the entrepreneurship, the fascination, the transition into the digital media, internet, all started when I said, okay, I banged my head against the wall enough times. I'm really not happy as a corporate person. So I think if you ask me, that's one mistake. I keep trying to make it work. But the thing is, when I say that, at the end of it, I realized that the mistakes also make up, the wrong decisions make up the tapestry of everything that's my career. Because you can make it work. If you have a long career, it's like a chapter of your book. I used to have a mentor who says, what if you think of it as a chapter of your life? A chapter instead of the ending, it's a chapter. So I look at every phase as a chapter.
Yes.
My corporate phase is a chapter. It was very boring at times, but I learned a lot of very good skills, like working very quickly because the show has to go on air. Like staying awake at night in the editing suite. So I think that the whole thing about making mistakes is, first, I find that in terms of a good life and a good career as a creative, first, decision making is very important, deliberate decision making and risk management. Make bold decisions, but limit your downside. Only take something up if you feel you can stomach the downside, but have a bottom. Not, don't let it keep falling. 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, whatever you can tolerate. Secondly, I feel that the mistakes are part of it. Sometimes your mistakes cause you to move in a direction that you hadn't anticipated, and a door might open, and you can make it work. I always think before I know what wisdom was, when I was growing up, I always think wisdom is like something that is very defined in books, like, Kongzi, Confucius says, whatever. But what I find is that wisdom is more like a skill. It's more like if you're playing a tennis game or if you're playing, it's dynamic in real time, and you won't make the same decision twice. So for example, now, if someone comes to me, some stranger from internet comes to me and say, I'll invest in your company, I might not make the same decision, but it doesn't mean that 8 years ago was the wrong decision. Because it opened up my life, So I think it's really about I feel that I think one thing always guides me is that I always live my life as though it's a great story that is unfolding, and I keep telling it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, can you imagine I was, I didn't know I was going to be a filmmaker. I became a filmmaker. I went to China. So it's almost like, and some of it, and I've made biographies of famous people before. So some of the episodes were not intended by me. But once it has happened, I'll make it part of my story.
Yeah.
This has happened to me. I was down and out. So I think you need to kind of be able to keep, and I think the main thing here is keep the story going, because I feel that, and one of the things I learned was the whole mindset that this is not the ending.
Yeah.
And as long as you know that it's not the ending, you can still change the story. You can still, and one of the things you learn about editing a film is that it's really about structuring, so like if this is the midpoint of the story and it's the end, it has a very different impact. So I think if you can take whatever just happened and move it forward as though you're telling a really great story about your life as a creative, then I think that the world will keep opening up. I think.
I think that's very true.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think of failure as the end. That's it, and then I start over from zero again. But I don't think. I think you put it in a very nice way, and an analogy. It's like it's a continuation. You never start from the beginning again.
Do you find that that's an obstacle for freelancers or creators?
Well, I guess I don't think it's an obstacle for freelancers, but I guess traditionally, right, Singaporeans are not big risk taker, right? And we always are very afraid of failure. That's why even our PM Lee now has to come out and say that, don't afraid of failures. It's okay to take risks or to
what are
lose.
People afraid of in terms of failure?
Well, I guess the main thing is really, because I have too much at risk, right? So in that sense, I don't dare to take risks, right? Because I have my house to consider, I have my kids, insurance to take care of, So in that sense, I think the risk appetite, right? A lot of people feels that they cannot take too much risk, but actually, maybe by what you have advised, right, in terms of taking smaller chunk of risk, break the risk into smaller chunk, right? In that sense, they can actually have a much more.
Actually, one of the most frustrating things I've ever heard when they're not willing to take a new risk is I don't have the experience in that area.
Okay.
Which to me is like, that's why, right? That's why you should go for it.
But I think one of the things I feel is that I think a lot of it is, just as I said, wisdom is a skill. I also feel that risk taking is like developing a muscle. So I feel that it's more start small. Like it's almost like if you take a slightly different route to work every day. So if you start small and you practice, you become more skilled in taking risks and having courage. And I think what I think the whole thing about this whole rhetoric about success and failure and all that is that I think we forget often that it's a skill, right? You can be much more courageous if you know how to manage the risk. They're not contradictory. I think we think of like bravery as, let's jump off the cliff, but actually most people who are very successful and accomplished, they're actually very disciplined. Like they think through all their downsides and decisions. And obviously everyone has a different risk appetite. But one of the things I find is really to, and I would encourage people to practice, in small ways. It's the whole thing about it's like I think before the recording we were talking about diets and working out and all that. It's the same like if you're building a workout routine. You will fail if you say I'm going to run for 2 hours every day or every week. But you will succeed if you say 15 minutes. I just start with 15 minutes a day. Because once you do 15 minutes, you'll probably do 20 and 25. And the same thing is about risks. And I think it's more thinking, first of all, I think it's really accepting that you can't ask for, you can't ask for a big adventurous life with no mistakes.
Yep.
It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You if you want a big adventurous life, if you want an interesting career, you will make mistakes. And I think the main thing is really to know exactly what you do to recover.
Yeah.
And it's actually plotted ahead of time so that you know what the trigger point is that you will stop doing this, and you know exactly what you do to recover.
Yeah.
So I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, I think that is important. Very well said. Thank you, Siok Siok, for joining us. Another episode of our Freelance Creative Exchange.
Yes. So for those of you out there who are watching and you have enjoyed this episode, please go ahead and follow us and subscribe to us by hitting the bell button on the YouTube channel, or follow us on our different podcast playlists.
Yeah. And join our community on our Facebook and as well as our Instagram. Until now, bye.
Bye.